In this video, we're covering part 2 of the custom gauge cluster installation. We're going to do all of the wiring for each one of the gauges. That's next. So in starting with the wiring here, I had to do two things in the engine compartment. The first one was over here, running the wire from the distributor, and that's going to be for the tachometer. And I've got that bundled up over here, ready to go. The second thing I had to do was set up the sensor for the oil pressure gauge. Now, I think I mentioned in the last video that the oil pressure gauge in the old set of gauges was a manual gauge. So the only thing that we had, sorry about that, the only thing that we had to deal with down here was you had the entry into the engine block, and then there was a little, kind of like a little tube that came out and went into the back of the oil pressure gauge. That's basically how they work. This one is different. This is electric. It's got this sensor right here, and that has a large 3/8 inch hose that goes into the engine block, as you can see right over here, and then you run your two wires over to the gauge. One of the wires is for the signal, and then the other wire is for a ground. Okay, so what I've done here is I've mounted that sensor to the firewall right there, and then you see the wires from the sensor and also the wire for the tach. I don't know if you can see the wire loom that they're going into, but they are wire loomed and they're now headed into the car right there. And on the interior, I have my two wires coming through. The green one is for the tach, and then this orange and white pair are for the oil pressure sensor. Okay, so I've been working in these wires, and this is what I've found. I've kind of untangled the spaghetti so that I understand it. I have two sets of grounds and two sets of 12 volts. Both of the 12 volts are keyed. These are the lights from the old gauges. So the gray wire that goes to all of the whites is a 12 volt keyed, and the gray wire that goes to all of the blacks is ground. I will be double checking that though to make sure. Then down here I have another pair of keyed 12 volts and ground. So I've got these two sets that can be very useful for what we're going to do. There was also a third 12 volt that was plugged, that was run and then plugged in up at the fuse block, which I yanked because I saw absolutely no reason why we needed that. So that leaves us with the extra ground over here from the temperature gauge. I'm going to find out where that guy goes. And then I have the signal wire there that's going to be used by the temp gauge. So we're getting it slowly but surely figured out, and this mess is getting a heck of a lot easier to understand now. Okay, I've gone through each one of these wires and I've marked them accordingly, and I also color-coded them by adding some additional wire of the proper color. So the red is going to be the hot, the blacks are ground, etc., etc. What I'm doing right now with each of the gauges is I'm kind of doing a little breadboarding experiment. I want to do two things. I want to make sure that each gauge is working properly, and I want to make sure that the light is working properly on each gauge. So I've got the voltmeter set up right now, and if I turn the key to on, I should get 12 volts. The light works. The gauge appears to be working. That's good. And I'll go through all of the rest of the gauges and make sure each one of them are working properly as well. So I'm showing you right now how I've marked these. You see, after I put the wire loom on, I just use my label maker and I add a label to that wire loom so I know exactly what those wires are for. In the future, if I have any trouble with these gauges, it makes it a lot easier for me to be able to go in and troubleshoot. Car's running, gauges work, even the lights. I turn them on, you see they go on with the lights. Everything is hunky-dory, so we're going to call this a success. We'll see you on the next video.